Hey everyone, Rob B here with Rob D, and you are listening to the Property Podcast. And if you are hardcore between Christmas and New Year when this goes out, if you celebrate Christmas, I hope you've had an amazing one. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you celebrated something and had a lovely break. And before we go into the new year, we just wanted to drop, it is a short episode because it's a quiet time of year, but we have a tradition of doing a little reflection episode each and every year and just looking back at what happened in property and for ourselves and just taking a pause to go, okay, let's reflect. Before we charge into 2022, how was 2021? What did it look like for property and for ourselves, if you're interested? So, Rob, here we are. We've survived, so I think that's the first thing I think we should be grateful for, in both terms of property and ourselves. We both turned up today. So, let's start with property. Rob, if you had to sum up property in 2021 in one word, what would it be?
I've got two answers to that. One is unexpected, because I didn't realise until we went back and looked back as a result of doing our predictions review a couple of weeks ago, how differently people were thinking about the property market at the start of last year compared to the end. So unexpected is one word. My other contender is just boom.
That's a good word. I was going to go with bonkers because it just was all over the place. Like, it was just a bit of a crazy year. Like, it's easy when you're in the moment just to accept what's going on, right? Because you're in the present. But when you just look back at the year as a whole, we went from starting the year where everyone thought property was in the doldrums and it was going to be a disastrous year for property and property investors and everyone was going to lose money and we just have to hold tight for now. And then it ended up just being like bonkers because, yes, all right, we went against the grain and we said it wouldn't be a terrible year for property, but we didn't expect it to be what it ended up being. Like, wow, like the property boom has well and truly started in 2021 and it's going to go on for a few years now. But I don't think many people, if anybody, saw the boom starting this year. We saw growth, but we thought it'd be a warm-up year for the boom. And I think your word is great, actually, boom, because it absolutely has been one. Double-digit growth in certain areas, and we'll see what the country ends up overall, because obviously the data is lagging, but it looks like the UK as a whole will be in double-digit growth, or if not, close to it. So, yeah, Rob, you've absolutely nailed it. Boom.
Yeah, and it's not just prices, rents as well. Rents have been going up pretty much everywhere. Rental demand is at all-time highs by various measures. A pattern that developed in the second half of the year was rental demand going mad in city centres, reversing the pattern of the previous years. And that's another giant change in sentiment from the start of the year. Back this time last year, if you listen to most people, city centres were dead. It was all over. No one wanted that anymore. Everyone wants space. Everyone wants a garden. No one's going to be going to the office anymore. Turned out not to quite be the case so much. All right, maybe we're not going to go quite back to exactly where we were, but that story turned out to be a little bit oversold. Another word that you could have chosen as a word of the year, Rob, was stimulus.
I have had a lot of coffee.
Well, not just you. The Bank of England have been having their coffee as well because they've kept interest rates low against lots of pressure. They didn't talk about tapering QE. Furlough kept getting extended. The stamp duty holiday gave the market a boost as well. And I think, Rob, it's going to be so interesting to see what happens next because the economy is in such a weird spot. Inflation started getting talked about a lot in the second half of 2021. I think we're going to be talking about that a lot this year as well because inflation is very much here, very much linked to the stimulus that I've just been talked about. But everyone involved politically in terms of central banks seems very relaxed about the fact that inflation is here. So I think a big theme for 2022 will be this kind of debate. And as inflation, both in terms of consumer prices and asset prices, continues to be present, there'll be this desire to keep it going and stoke it further. But then there'll also be other people saying, no, this needs to stop. You need to take some action here. So seeing what politicians and central banks do in response to that debate and what they decide to do in terms of policy in reaction to it is going to be one of the most important things that I think property investors can keep an eye on and therefore something that we'll be talking about a lot on this podcast.
Okay, Rob, so that's property. Let's move on to one of our favourite subjects now, ourselves. As one of the co-founders of Property Hub, how's your year been?
I think you know how my year's been. My year's been really hard.
That's why I wanted you to go first. Not because I'm mean, because mine's been amazing, but it's because on the Property Hub side, I've lived it with you. So, I knew what your answer was going to be.
Yeah, honestly, it's been, for various reasons, not just business, the most difficult year I've ever had. But in terms of business, it's just been absolutely nuts. And by the end of it, we've achieved something wonderful, right? We've launched Portfolio, which we're so excited about. It's something we've been working on for years. But getting to that point, my goodness, it's been a bit of a slog, hasn't it?
It has. And I'm really grateful for the Christmas New Year break because, my goodness, we needed it. And that's because I think we just stumbled into the end of the year, both absolutely shattered, mentally drained. It's not like we're going down the mine every day digging for copper, but the mental pressures of launching Portfolio have been immense. But you know what? We launched it. And we're absolutely awful at congratulating ourselves and giving ourselves any credit. But I think if we're ever due that moment, I think we can give ourselves a tiny pat on the back for making that happen, because the amount of work, and not just from ourselves, I think it's very important to point out right now, from the entire team, the amount of work, effort, blood, sweat and tears, and yes, there were tears at times, like to get this launched, it was just unbelievable. I've forced myself to reflect knowing we're going to record this, and I had a year of two halves. The first half of the year I absolutely loved. I was absolutely bouncing in kind of all aspects, because we were launching the REIT at that point and I was on a huge learning curve, and I love to learn. And that first half of the year, I was learning about a new world, the fund world, the investment world, luckily being able to make decisions by having a very, very experienced and expensive, but experienced group of people and advisors around us, and just being a sponge. And I absolutely loved the first half of the year. So the first half of the year was kind of the REIT. The second half of the year, because the app is being built on top of the REIT, but I'm just not a coder, right? I understand tech, I love tech, but it's just beyond my remit. The fund world I can get because I've worked in investment of one form or another for so many years. And while it was different, while I could learn a lot, I could learn it. But being able to contribute to the code, the build of the app, it's just not going to happen. So I found the second half of the year on reflection quite frustrating, because I couldn't directly impact things as much. And that on a mental level was really, really tough, because I've been in business over 10 years now. I think that's the first time it's ever happened that I can't really impact what's going on. And when we had challenges, and we had multiple, because, you know, if you do something this big, you're going to have lots of challenges to overcome. Instead of being part of the core group of solving it, I wasn't. And that was quite weird for me. But at the same time, I was exposed to all the problems. So knowing there was all these things that needed to be resolved, but then not being able to really impact or change them was tough.
Yeah, completely understand that. This has been challenging for both of us for different reasons. And I think we were, as a result of that, both kind of crawling into the Christmas break. But as this is an episode for being reflective, had a little bit of a break now and can kind of look back on it and go, you know what? It was really hard, but we did it. And there were multiple times throughout the year, including the couple of days before we actually did launch it, when it really looked like it wasn't going to happen at all. There are so many things that could have killed it off, but we did it. Scarily, it is just the start. We're just getting into the starting line. I'm sure there's going to be loads more challenges to come, but we did it. And you reminded me from what you said a minute ago, Rob, about how much we have learned along the way, and had to do a bit of reflecting to get to this point of seeing the positive in all the difficulty. But we have learned so much in so many different ways as a result of doing everything that we've done. So having got to the end of the year, having achieved finally something huge, having learned loads along the way, I said it's been the most difficult year ever, and it has. But if you've achieved something big and you've learned a lot, you can't say it's been a bad year, really, can you?
No, you can't. And I'll always remember how I felt when that first person, the lady it was, who invested in the app, we didn't know, just on the invite list, got invited, downloaded the app, and became a property investor through the app. That moment, oh my goodness, that was a special moment. And lots of people have joined since, and they've been all brilliant moments as well. And it's great that so many people are either expanding their property portfolios or investing for the first time in property through their phone. That is why it was so hard, because that is incredible. And that's why the slog of 2021 was worth it, because in 2022, we build on that. 2022, it's out there now, it's launched. Yes, there's going to be more challenges, but my goodness, we have an app that allows people to become property investors. That's incredible. And that is why it was so hard, because it is incredible. But it's amazing, absolutely amazing, being able to see people downloading the app, progressing through the steps they need to take, and then becoming property investors. I don't know when that novelty is going to wear off, but I hope it isn't anytime soon, because I'm absolutely loving that.
Well, Rob, I knew that wouldn't be the short episode we said it was going to be, but I'm glad that we did it because, yeah, I found that reflection really useful personally, and hopefully it's been interesting for some people listening as well. But that is it. That is it for this episode. And that is it for 2021 on the Property Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Whether you've listened to one or two episodes this year or all of them, we really, really appreciate you being here and listening to the podcast and being part of the Property Hub community and giving us your support. Very much hope you continue to join us next year because I'm excited. I think we're going to have the best year of the podcast ever. We've got so much great stuff coming up. Starting next Thursday, we've got a cracking episode for you. But until then, I'll just say Happy New Year. Bye-bye.
Happy New Year. Bye-bye.